Mr. Chair.
Mr. Wright, thank you very much. Chris Stevens.
Well, with your permission, and I don't want to create a precedent here of trying to respond to each of the respected commenters, but I do respect the organization for which the last commenter is representing and providing testimony, and so I want to just give a real quick retort to what he said, because I think it's inaccurate, and I think that the council shouldn't be left with any idea that we still have time to stop the CEQA process and to correct some kind of illegality. That's so not the case that it deserves reiterating once again that the Delta Reform Act was put in place by the legislature and the governor at the time in 2009 to address a crisis, and they gave us a deadline to adopt a plan, and unfortunately, because of the complexity of the issues involved, we've talked about this before, we didn't meet the deadline, but we're nearing completion. We're in the final stages of refinement. There is no insufficiency with regard to defining the project at hand. The project at hand was defined when we let the initial EIR back in 2011, and the process took its course the way the process was supposed to work. We listened to comments from stakeholders. We listened, we deliberated, we had workshops, we had many meetings. Dan Ray talked about all the meetings and comments that we actually received. And this council made changes to the Delta plan based on those comments to make it a better plan. We decided that we would go out and recirculate based on, again, a finite project description, but one that had changed based on public input. So this is the way the process should work. There is no a warning that we should somehow stop the process now to do it right is to me something that goes against what the ultimate direction of the legislature and the governor was to this council, was to get the job done. With regard to the flow criteria, we've gotten comment letters not only from the previous speakers' organizations, but others that have suggested that somehow if we act without the state board or without us coming up with flow criteria, we're acting in a way that's not consistent with the Delta Reform Act. The flow criteria that the gentleman was referring to were produced by the state board with an amazing amount of dispatch and speed given the tight deadline that they were given. And those flow criteria were, again, non-binding recommendations. They were based on public trust, the way the Delta Reform Act laid out the requirement to the state board. The state board did submit those flow criteria to us and to the BDCP to inform our planning purposes, and they have informed our planning purposes. The state, as part of our Delta plan, as you know, we have a strong recommendation to the state board that they update their flow objectives, the binding, the regulatory flow objectives. They're engaged in that process now. You had a part in encouraging that process at a more expedited pace. But the flow criteria that the state board, the non-binding flow criteria, were developed and were submitted to us for our decision-making, or at least to inform our decision-making process. So with that, I will turn it back to you, and I appreciate your time.